Now, I was talking to someone today who went in to try and buy some, solution to pop in your hands, the antiseptic stuff, sold everywhere that they went. I have to say, I would be hoping we don't have much more of a pandemic because I haven't got much in my pantry. Nick Rees, have you been out there shopping up?
No, I haven't, and I've got to say I think the panic buying is ridiculous. Last time I checked, you could buy pretty much all things online in this country, so if you did have to self-isolate, you could just buy whatever you need online. You don't need to go to the supermarkets and clear out the shelves. But the bigger story here is about the overreaction that I think is going on. We need to keep this into perspective. There's about 3,000 people...
Who's overreacting?
I think the world is overreacting to coronavirus. There are about 3,000 people that have died. Let's say those numbers are underreported. Let's say it's 10 times more than that. It's actually 30,000 people have died. Last year, 650,000 people died from influenza. Now, the bad news about coronavirus is it spreads very easily. The good news about it is the mortality rate is very low, marginally higher than influenza. What does that mean?
Fair bit higher than influenza, let's be honest.
Not that much, about 2% to about 2.3%. What does that mean? It means a lot of people are going to get it. It's going to become a pandemic, but it's not going to be an extinction event. It's not like a Hollywood
Yeah, but your types freak out over imaginary crises. So when people are actually dying, I can understand why people are freaking out. I'm not personally, but...
You're not panic buying, Rita?
I'm not, but... there is a vicious circle because my local Coles has almost run out of toilet paper. And so people who aren't survivalists now have to panic buy just so they can have the essentials because the survivalists are cleaning out the shelves. So it can be a bit of a vicious cycle. But I just think with coronavirus, we had a leading virologist, Australian professor, saying it's not going to be a pandemic, it's going to end up being endemic. It's going to be with us forever. We're not going to be able to put it back in the box, which means we'll all eventually get it. And that's my attitude to it. And don't have it impact your life to such an extent that you're changing plans and panicking, because if it's with us, it's with us, and you've just got to take precautions, wash your hands, and be as safe as you can be.
Here's a controversial prediction. The overreaction to coronavirus will actually do more harm than the actual virus itself. I do think it's serious. I do think we need to take precautions.
Well, that's a silly
but we
thing
also
to
need
say.
to carry on.
The overreaction isn't going to kill anybody. This virus is actually killing people. And I think you're speaking with your University of Melbourne hat on, because the universities in this country have become so dependent on overseas students, particularly from China, and they're really hurting right now. They're fearful of these students going to US or Europe and not coming back. Your university is offering $6,500 grants, or sorry, it was a $7,500 cash grants to try to help these students go to a third country and then come to Australia and bypass the restrictions.
Yeah, I just want to pick up one point. We'll move on to something else because I think everyone's been coronavirused out tonight. But, in 1919, when the Spanish flu hit Australia, 42% of people in Sydney, of all the deaths, were out of Sydney. Now, if you extrapolate those sorts of numbers to the population of Australia at the time, based on the current predictions of coronavirus, you could have 50,000 Australians catch coronavirus. Now, I'm not saying they're going to die, but the mortality rate is still 2%, still higher than the flu. I think the real rush is to make sure we've got all the measures in place, particularly if people do front up to GP clinics and they do front up at hospitals. They ring ahead and let people know they're on their way. We have the case today where someone now, a doctor, has coronavirus in New South Wales confirmed, having got it from a patient as opposed to bringing it into the country. That's going to see the disease change, and of course there's all the economic ramifications. Nick, how do you think this is playing out? You've been in Canberra, in and around all these ERC meetings. You know the budget's now in May, 2 months. This is tough for the budget.
Look, I can't see the government returning a budget surplus, and I think they'd want to be wary if they did. Look,
so what happens with the mugs and the T-shirts?
Well, the Back in Black mugs, I'm looking forward to bringing my copy of the Back in Black mug into the Sky News studios. I'll drink from it every night. In all seriousness, though, I mean, you don't just, save up for surpluses for the sake of the surplus. The surplus is there to be used for the good of people, the good of Australia. And I think we are going to need some stimulus measures for certain sectors of the economy. Tourism, perhaps higher education as well, perhaps for some of our food exporters. So yes, the surplus is there for a reason. It should be expended in times of need. And I think there's a very grave threat the Australian economy is going to go into recession.
All right,